The signs of infidelity were apparent almost immediately, but for some reason, I turned a blind eye to them. Eventually, it all ended badly for me. My wife had the audacity to betray me, and I couldn't simply let it go. My name is Colin Sampson, and I'm a licensed professional engineer. After earning my master's degree, I continued my education, passed the necessary exams, and fulfilled all the criteria to obtain my state license. My field of expertise is water resources, which might sound impressive but primarily involves water supply and sanitation projects. Essentially, I ensure people have access to clean water and manage waste removal systems. I graduated at the top of my class, and one of my professors, who taught logic and statistics, became a significant influence on me. Although we often disagreed, I managed to solve one of his favorite orientation problems, earning his respect. He later became my mentor and personal tutor. With his guidance, I clarified any academic uncertainties and graduated summa cum laude with both my bachelor's and master's degrees. I've been married to Sabrina for 4 years. We met when she was an intern at a print shop. One day, the copy machine she was working on broke down while I was making copies of blueprints. We ran into each other several days in a row, and I was immediately captivated by her radiant smile. Things progressed quickly between us, and soon we had the talk about dating exclusively. Growing up, I experienced a fractured family life. My father left when I was young, and my mother remarried a few years later. I didn't learn until my teenage years that my father's infidelity had caused my parents' separation. My stepfather wasn't much of a father figure, and I still carry unresolved anger toward my biological dad. He stopped visiting not long after moving out, and the feeling that I didn't matter to him left deep emotional scars. From the beginning of my relationship with Sabrina, I made my views on fidelity very clear. Sabrina, on the other hand, came from a very different background. Her parents and both sets of grandparents are still happily married, so she couldn't fully relate to my experiences. However, she shared my belief that fidelity is non-negotiable. Sabrina is strong-willed. While she's not entirely inflexible, she does have a my way or the highway mentality at times. I think we balance each other out well, as I'm not afraid to call her out when she focuses too much on herself instead of our relationship. Perhaps her being an only child shaped her perspective differently from mine. I had to learn to share and compromise with siblings. Our intimate life has always been passionate. Once we became deeply connected as partners, our physical relationship flourished. Our wedding was a grand affair, almost too extravagant for my taste. I remember feeling sorry for Sabrina's mom, who seemed overwhelmed by the pressure of it all. Being an only child likely contributed to Sabrina's high expectations. One of our favorite pastimes is attending musicals at the Performing Arts Theater. We have season tickets and usually make an evening of it, dinner beforehand, followed by drinks and dancing. It's always a romantic night out. We see about 8 musicals a year. I've never been much of an athlete, though I enjoy watching college sports. Professional sports don't interest me much, and when it comes to the Olympics, I prefer the events where athletes compete against the clock rather than judged ones. Sabrina, however, has no interest in sports whatsoever. Sabrina works at the law firm of Simpson and Haggerty, where Nancy Simpson herself has a reputation for expecting her female associates to maintain a professional and polished appearance. As a result, Sabrina often opts for pantsuits, which I appreciate. It saves her from unwanted attention. Sabrina is one of the standout hires and hopes that one day the firm will be renamed Simpson, Sampson, and Haggerty. Recently, one of Sabrina's best friends from high school got engaged, and Sabrina has agreed to be a bridesmaid. The bride comes from a wealthy family, and the ceremony will take place in Cancun. Each member of the bridal party received round-trip tickets for 2 and a week-long stay at a timeshare. Most of the wedding party was expected to arrive by Thursday, with the rehearsal dinner scheduled for Friday night and the wedding planned for late Saturday afternoon. From what Sabrina had heard, most people intended to stay the full 7 days. However, due to an important trial on Monday, we would only be staying until Sunday morning. The trial would be held before a jury, but Sabrina was confident their case was strong enough to secure a directed verdict in their favor. At 4 a.m. on Thursday, we locked up the house and headed to the airport for our early morning flight to Dallas-Fort Worth. We had a 90-minute layover before our connection to Cancun. Sabrina had brought along her case folder from Monday's trial. "I thought those folders weren't supposed to leave the office," I said. "They're not," she admitted, "but I need to make sure I've memorized all the key points and our responses. We've invested a lot of money preparing for this case. Do you think you'll even be able to relax on this trip?" "Definitely. I'll manage my time so I can go over the trial materials and still have fun. I'm ready to let my hair down." After a long wait for our luggage, we finally arrived at the resort. Once we checked in, we headed straight to the restaurant. Since the trip was all-inclusive, we didn't waste any time taking advantage of the amenities. While Sabrina was in the restroom, the manager came over to introduce himself. "Good afternoon, sir. I'm Julio, the manager. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." I was a little uneasy about Sabrina bringing court documents with her, so I decided to address my concerns. "Nice to meet you, Julio. My name is Colin. How secure are the premises here?" "We have the best security system in the city, sir. There are 30 cameras installed throughout the resort, and we've been keeping records for 2 years. We protect our guests flawlessly. If you have any concerns, I can provide records of every time your door was opened, and we can review the surveillance footage together if needed." "That's reassuring. Thank you, Julio. It's nice to meet you. I think we're going to enjoy our stay." Afterward, Sabrina and I found our room and settled in. Exhausted from the trip, we quickly fell asleep after setting an alarm. Thursday night featured a meet and greet with the bridal party and a few early arriving family friends. I didn't know many people there, having only met a few couples briefly at our wedding. After dinner, the DJ started taking song requests, and the dancing began. Sabrina was wearing a knee-length skirt and a sleeveless blouse that showed off her legs. The venue had 3 separate dance floors. From our table, we couldn't see the left dance floor, but people were watching from the second-floor railing. Sabrina and I danced to a few songs, which was about my limit since dancing isn't really my thing. After the first slow dance of the evening, we returned to our seats that we hadn't been sitting long when a man approached Sabrina and asked her to dance. "Can I?" she asked me. "Only the fast ones," I replied. She danced a few songs with him and then came back for a drink. Soon after, another man asked her to dance. Without even looking at me, she accepted. I tried to focus on a conversation about Friday's golf game, but when I looked around, Sabrina was nowhere to be seen. I went upstairs to the second floor and saw her dancing on the left dance floor. The fast song ended, and a slow one began. I watched as Sabrina started to walk away from her partner but then turned back and joined him again. They swayed together, his hands lingering a bit too much. That was enough for me that I walked over to Sabrina and said, "What part of no slow dancing don't you understand?" She pushed her partner away and looked at me, wide-eyed. "I forgot." "I'm sorry." "Forgot? Really? And did you enjoy it?" I asked, turning to her dance partner. He remained silent, so I focused back on Sabrina. "If you're not back in our room within 10 seconds, I'll destroy your lawsuit file." I headed for the elevator, and Sabrina quickly ran to our table to grab her things. As the elevator doors were closing, she shouted, "Wait! Hold the door!" I yelled back, 10 seconds behind me, or I destroy it. "Take the stairs." I let the elevator doors shut. As I unlocked the door to our room, I heard the stairwell door swing open. Sabrina, out of breath, ran toward me and caught the door just before it closed. "Did you really have to cause a scene?" she asked. "Me? Cause a scene? I wasn't the one putting on a show, I replied. I lifted her skirt slightly and saw she was wearing a thong. Since when did you become so reckless? I guess I drank too much. I'm sorry, she said. That's nonsense. Get out of my sight, I snapped. Sabrina shut the bedroom door behind her, and I spent the night on the couch. The next morning, we didn't talk much as we got ready and headed downstairs for breakfast. Less than an hour later, we were back in the room. I'm joining the golfing group. What about you? I asked. I'm going with the shopping group, Sabrina replied. Will you be back by 4? We need to help set up. I will. See you later. Maybe we can have some fun before the rehearsal. Sounds good, babe, I said, heading out. I arrived in the lobby around 8:25 a.m. Our group had 3 tee times at the resort's golf course, about a 15-minute drive from the timeshare. 11 of us piled into the van sent by the golf course, 7 guys and 2 couples. The couples teed off first, as they had organized the outing. At the par 3 14th hole, play slowed significantly. The first group was just leaving the green, and our second group was waiting to tee off. We had at least a 15-minute wait before we could continue. Tom, the guy I was sharing a cart with, decided to call his wife to check in on the shopping trip. After some light husband and wife banter, he hung up. Are the ladies enjoying their shopping? I asked. Oh yeah, Tom chuckled. Shelby can max out a credit card anywhere. It doesn't matter where we are, she always finds something to buy. She mentioned one of the women wasn't feeling well, so she sent the shopping bags back with her to the front desk. Great. That means she's turning this into 2 shopping trips. Tom laughed. Exactly. Her hands are free now, so who knows what else she'll find. I decided to call Sabrina, but the call went straight to voicemail. Later, while waiting on the 18th fairway, my phone buzzed. It was Sabrina. Hey, babe. How's shopping going? I asked. We just got back. I saw you called, she replied. Yeah, we were held up on the course, so I thought I'd check in. I must not have heard it ring. You know how noisy malls can be. Our cab just dropped us off. Will you be back soon? I should be back in about an hour. See you soon. On the van ride back to the resort, my phone buzzed again with a text. Your daily room log is available at the front desk. I picked up the envelope at the desk and joined a small group heading to the elevator. Skimming through the report, I noticed several entries for our room. 6:42a, M.7:29a, M.8:20a, M.8:45a, M.12:10 p.m., 12:12 p.m., 2:09 p.m., 2:10 p.m. Curious, I decided to investigate further. I returned to the lobby and asked Julio, the manager, for help. Julio, we met yesterday. I'm Colin. Yes, sir. I remember. Did you receive your room activity report? I nodded. It shows our room was accessed multiple times today. Could we review the security footage for some of these times? Of course, Colin. Come with me. We reviewed the footage together. The entries around breakfast were consistent with us leaving and returning. At 8:45 a.m., Sabrina was seen leaving the room wearing a blouse and slacks, likely heading to the shopping trip. Around 12:10 p.m., the footage showed her dropping off shopping bags at the front desk, then entering our room carrying another package. She left 2 minutes later with only her room key. That's my wife. Can we check the footage for 2:09 p.m.? I asked. The footage showed Sabrina leaving our room wearing an oversized men's t-shirt with a race logo on it. She carried a small bag and her shoes, her legs bare. She looked noticeably distracted. Hold on, I said. Can we rewind and see where she came from? Julio rewound the footage, displaying multiple camera angles. It became clear that Sabrina had left room 305 before returning to our room. Her expression was blank, almost emotionless. What about 12:14 p.m.? Can we check that time too? I asked. The footage showed a tall man entering room 305 just after noon. A few minutes later, Sabrina opened the door and entered. Are you all right, sir? Would you like some water or coffee? Julio asked gently. No, but thank you. One last thing, can we revisit the 2:09 p.m. footage? We watched as Sabrina returned to our room wearing the t-shirt. A minute later, she came out wearing a robe and carrying a small sack. She disposed of the sack in the trash by the elevator before going back inside. I'm sorry, sir. Do you want me to print out the photos of her entering and leaving the room? I handed Julio a $20 bill. Yes, please. I'll pick them up later tonight. And Julio, please keep this meeting confidential. You have my word, sir. Later, I looked through the guest list. Room 305 was assigned to Dennis and Mary Lou Denton. With Mary Lou as the bridesmaid, I decided to investigate further. On my way to our room, I rummaged through the trash and retrieved the package Sabrina had thrown away. Inside was the t-shirt she had been wearing earlier. I slipped it into my jacket and headed to our room. Hi, honey, Sabrina greeted me cheerfully. We have some time before the rehearsal, how about some fun? Sabrina opened her robe, but I brushed it off. As tempting as it sounds, baby, my stomach's bothering me. I'm going to take a shower and try to calm down. That's too bad. I hope you feel better tonight, she said. In truth, I had no intention of pretending everything was fine. While I was in the shower, I realized that this might be my last chance to confront her. I couldn't think of an explanation for her behavior that wouldn't end in divorce. My frustration was growing, and it began to show in my demeanor. As we got ready for the rehearsal, Sabrina commented, "Someone's in a bad mood. Maybe I can cheer you up tonight." "I doubt it," I replied coldly. She looked puzzled but didn't press the issue. While the bridal party rehearsed, I chatted with the other spouses to gather information about the Dentons. I learned that both Dennis and Mary Lou had attended high school with Sabrina, as had many of the bridal party members. Sabrina and I were among the few who had met after high school. I also noticed that the man Sabrina had danced with on Thursday was avoiding me. His wife, coincidentally, was also part of the bridal party. After dinner, the DJ started playing music. "Are you going to dance tonight, honey?" Sabrina asked. "No. Neither of us is dancing tonight," I said firmly. "But I want to dance." "Sorry, babe. I told you no slow dances last night, and you completely ignored me. No dancing tonight." Sabrina left the table in a huff. I saw her mingling with others, but she seemed to be avoiding Dennis. I didn't catch her doing anything inappropriate, though she kept glancing my way, checking if I was watching. After avoiding me for nearly 2 hours, she finally returned to our table. "Some of us are heading to the hot tub. Want to come?" she asked. "We're not going. We're done for the night. Get your stuff, and let's go." "What's wrong with you?" she snapped. "I'm going to the hot tub." I glared at her. "Pack your things, and let's leave. Now." She saw something in my eyes that startled her. The area around our table fell silent as we became the center of attention. Sabrina grabbed her purse with a shrug and followed me toward the elevators. Once we were back in the room, she demanded, "What is your problem? What's gotten into you?" "It's not about me, it's about you. I'm just wondering how many times you've served me leftovers. If I were you, I'd lock myself in the bedroom or risk falling off the balcony." "Oh God, no. Let me explain," she cried. I opened the sliding glass door to the balcony and looked back at her. Shut up, I said coldly that I took a step toward her, and she hurried into the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. From the other side, I heard her pleading, "Colin, please. Can we talk?" "You can put on a show during the wedding," I replied, "but we're done." "Don't say that. I love you." I slammed my hand against the bedroom door. "Shut up, Sabrina. We're done." Sabrina started crying, and I left the room quietly. Downstairs in the lobby, I picked up the envelope Julio had prepared for me. In the business center, I made 2 copies of each photo. I stayed up watching TV until 2 a.m., while Sabrina's crying continued until midnight. Saturday morning was incredibly tense. Every time Sabrina tried to speak, I made it clear she should remain silent. I kept her in sight whenever we were out of the room. Around noon, she began preparing for the wedding, spending time with the bridal party. The other bridesmaids tried to cheer her up as they got ready. Meanwhile, I stayed in the lounge, avoiding her. A few spouses casually checked in to see if everything was okay, and I suspected Sabrina had asked them to. During this time, I changed my return flight to a red-eye leaving at midnight. After the wedding ceremony, the reception moved on to cake and dancing. "Are we dancing tonight?" Sabrina asked hesitantly. "Feel free to dance," I said. "But if I see any of the nonsense I witnessed on Thursday, your room key might not work." "That's fine. I only want to dance with you," she said. We didn't dance. It was clear she wanted to talk, but I avoided it, knowing it would only lead to more yelling and shouting. Throughout the reception, I subtly added a sleeping pill to Sabrina's drinks. She stayed awake long enough to see the bride and groom off, but soon after, she said, "I'm not feeling well. Can we go back to the room?" Once she was asleep, I packed my things. I took her passport, driver's license, credit card, and the trial folder. In her suitcase, I left a set of photos along with a note, "I've already left for home. We're done. Colin." I prepared another package addressed to Mary Lou Denton, containing the photos and Sabrina's discarded t-shirt. The note read, "Mary Lou, this is the shirt my soon-to-be ex-wife Sabrina wore when she left your room on Friday." The photos show Dennis and her together for about 2 hours. Colin, as I waited for my cab to the airport, I noticed the Dentons were still celebrating. I approached Mary Lou with a package and a note. "Mary Lou, here's something for you. Dennis, I hope your divorce is the most painful one imaginable. You'll be looking over your shoulder for a long time. You may not know when, but you haven't seen the last of me." I saw fear in Dennis's eyes, but I didn't want to involve the police. As the cab driver loaded my bag, I saw the resort security heading toward the reception room. Through the rear window as we drove away, I noticed a bloodied Dennis being escorted out by security, clutching a towel to his forehead. By the time I arrived home, it was 7 a.m., and I was exhausted. Sabrina would be waking up soon in Mexico. I managed a few short naps during the flights to and from Dallas-Fort Worth, so I started a pot of coffee and scavenged the fridge, snacking on cookies and energy bars. My phone buzzed with a text, "Where are you? We need to leave for the airport in an hour. Why didn't you wake me?" A smile crept across my face. I figured she'd be panicked in less than 10 minutes. My prediction was spot on. Soon, my phone rang, but I let it go to voicemail. Her message came through, "Colin, I'm sorry. We can get through this. You can have a hall pass, 10 hall passes if you want. Please, just talk to me." I replied via text, "I'm already home. Your passport, driver's license, credit card, and trial folder are on the kitchen table. I won't be here when you get back." I started counting backward from 20, but my phone rang again before I reached 0. I let it go to voicemail once more. This time, her tone was angry, "You bastard. I'm stranded here. I have to be in court in the morning." Unable to resist, I texted back, "Too bad you weren't part of my plan. Can you relate to that?" Oh wait, of course, you can. Friday at noon was your afternoon delight, well planned. I scanned the set of photos into my computer, adding captions like, her husband's room, and, not her husband's room. Then, I emailed them to Sabrina and blind copied the entire bridal party as well as her parents. An hour later, she called, crying so hard I could barely make out her words. I can't get help with my passport until tomorrow. Oh my God, she's going to fire me. Please, help me. Do something. Her desperation was almost pitiable. Almost. I deleted the voicemail. It was too pathetic to listen to again. I replied via text, if you want, I can deliver the trial folder and a set of pictures to Mrs. Simpson. I realized I shouldn't keep the folder in my possession. This might be my way out of further trouble. Her response was one of a broken person. Yes, please. Get them to her. Thank you. I never meant to hurt you. Can we at least talk? The only thing I was certain of was how to spell divorce. I hadn't thought much about the process until then. The idea of Sabrina losing her job and me potentially paying alimony concerned me. I decided to withhold the pictures from Mrs. Simpson. After confirming her address, I drove to her home. Mrs. Simpson, sorry to bother you on a Sunday. Sabrina and I were in Mexico. I'm back now, but she had some issues with her passport. She asked me to deliver this to you. Have a nice day. A few hours later, I received a text from Sabrina. She suspended me without pay for a month. She didn't say a word about the pictures. I quickly replied, you've lost your husband, wrecked your career, and alienated your friends and family, all for a brief fling. What a disgrace. I had no idea what you meant when you said you wanted to let loose. I guess you really did. I'm keeping the pictures in case the divorce gets contentious. Her response came almost immediately, please, Colin. No divorce. I don't want to lose you. When can we talk? Even texting her was fueling my anger. It's easy to declare love after making a mess of everything. I replied, I'm turning my phone off. If you can get here in 15 minutes, I'll hear you out. True to my word, I turned off my phone. I had initially taken Monday off, so I spent Sunday packing and enjoying one last night in my own bed. At sunrise, I listened to a few more of Sabrina's voicemails, which sounded like they were straight out of the cheater's playbook. By mid-morning, I decided to look for temporary accommodations. I found a bed and breakfast near my office for $350 per week, with an 18-day availability starting that day. I went to check it out and found it perfect. The property, run by Denise, had a hot tub on the back porch and garage parking. Denise was reserved but kind, and she encouraged me to book the stay. Within an hour, I returned with everything I needed. On Monday night, Denise and I chatted briefly. She ran a business from home and was about to turn 50. Her husband had passed away in a car accident a few years ago. She had 2 daughters. One lived 1,000 miles away and was married with no children, while the other, Carrie, lived nearby with her 3-year-old daughter. On Tuesday morning, I woke to the aroma of bacon, a nice breakfast prepared by Denise. Later, I took a long lunch to meet with a divorce attorney. He assured me the paperwork would be filed promptly, and Sabrina would be served by Thursday if she was back in town. In typical, jilted husband fashion, I began juggling finances and preparing for the next chapter of my life. Sabrina returned home Tuesday afternoon and relentlessly left voicemails and text messages. After listening to them, I responded with a single text, you wanted to talk. Can you meet for drinks Thursday night? She replied almost immediately, yes. Where are you staying? As far away from you as possible, I answered. That silenced her. Denise and I had an unspoken agreement. The housing arrangement covered breakfast, but she seemed pleased when I accepted her invitations to join her for dinner. In many ways, she had become my counselor. Though I didn't expect her to have all the answers, her willingness to listen and ask thoughtful questions was surprisingly therapeutic. On Wednesday night, her neighbor Kathleen joined us for dinner. A devout churchgoer with strong opinions, Kathleen made for an unusual dinner companion. I glanced at Denise a few times during Kathleen's passionate monologues, and she simply shrugged and smiled. After Kathleen left, I remarked, that was definitely an unusual experience. She's feeling isolated, Denise explained. Her husband is stationed abroad, home for just 2 weeks at a time and then gone for 10. I hope it wasn't too much for you. Not at all. She's almost amusing to listen to, though she seems to have a loose grip on reality. Denise laughed. Yes, she does. Thank you for putting up with it. Would you like some peach pie? Carrie made it. I'd love a piece, I said. Over dessert, I learned more about Denise's family. Carrie had gone through a difficult divorce, and Denise's granddaughter, Celeste, seemed to have her grandmother completely wrapped around her little finger. By Thursday night, my stomach was in knots as I approached the table where Sabrina was already seated. Hi, Colin. How are you? She asked tentatively. I'm just great. And you? Devastated. I was served earlier today. Couldn't you wait until we talked? What's there to discuss? I don't need to understand your reasons. For all I know, you could have been doing this throughout our entire marriage. Do you think handing me hall passes will fix things? Not a chance. I never wanted a promiscuous wife, and I'm certainly not interested in a supposedly reformed one. It became clear in Cancun that you only care about yourself. Rules and vows mean nothing to you. So, what exactly is there to talk about? Colin, she said, her voice trembling. I wasn't sure I could express what I needed to, so I wrote you a letter. Even if we end up getting divorced, I promise I'll do everything I can to win your heart back. She handed me a letter with shaking hands. While another man might have softened, I wasn't raised that way. I stuffed the letter into my pocket. If you have any issues with the terms of the divorce, have your attorney contact mine, I said flatly. Colin, please. What will it take for us to get through this? A time machine. Watching someone you once loved in pain is heart-wrenching. I wasn't taking her back, but her desperation was hard to ignore. Every please was met with a firm shake of my head. When I returned to Denise's house after 10 p.m., she was waiting for me. Want to talk? She asked. I don't know, I admitted. This hurts. The first question you need to answer honestly is this: are you better off with her or without her? Denise offered a hug, which I gratefully accepted. Thank you. I'll think about it, I said. Despite my exhaustion, I lay awake until well after midnight. On Friday afternoon, I left work early to watch my alma mater play in the NCAA tournament. At halftime, with my team comfortably ahead, I enjoyed chatting with Celeste, Denise's mischievous and charming 3-year-old granddaughter. Just then, a woman walked through the front door without knocking. She was dressed sharply and carried herself with confidence. You must be Carrie, I said, rising to greet her. That's right. And you must be Colin, she replied with a smile. Your daughter is adorable and quite the little flirt, I said. She's very outgoing. Mom mentioned you're staying for 2 more weeks. Not quite 2 weeks. She has another engagement, but I've enjoyed my stay so much that I've booked 5 more weeks after her next guests. What are you watching? She asked. The basketball tournament. Feel free to join me, the second half is about to start. No thanks. I'm not into watching men play sports. I'd prefer a show or a play. Would you like tickets to a musical at the Performing Arts Theater tomorrow night? They're for 7 p.m. I won't be using them, and it would be a shame to waste them. Carrie took the tickets, examined them briefly, and then went to find her mom. She returned a few minutes later. Colin, if you're free tomorrow night, would you like to go to a musical? It wouldn't be a date, just two people sitting next to each other enjoying the show that I didn't need a second invitation. I already knew how to make Sabrina jealous. Only if that stranger is you, I replied. Do you think this stranger would like to have dinner before the show? I'll be ready at 5. Mom will be watching Celeste. That sounds perfect. Would it be a problem if I ordered a larger meal? Not at all. If you don't have another nice outfit, you can just wear that one, it looks great on you. I'm not worried about myself. I hope you clean up nicely, Carrie teased, with a mischievous glint in her eye. Now I understood where Celeste got her playful nature. Carrie gathered Celeste, and we said our goodbyes. It was refreshing to talk about something other than my job or personal issues. Even though it wasn't supposed to be a date, I found myself feeling a bit nervous about Saturday. Around noon, I received a text from Sabrina. My calendar reminded me about our musical tonight. Are we still going? I replied, I'm going with someone else. Am I that easy to forget? She asked. It's impressive. That's exactly what I thought in Cancun, I shot back. I'm sorry, Colin. Did you read my letter? Not yet. Honestly, I had forgotten about the letter. I glanced at the envelope but decided it was still too early to put myself through that ordeal. Carrie arrived around 4 p.m., and we sat at the kitchen table with Denise, making small talk. Carrie seemed just as nervous as I was. As 5 o'clock approached, she told Celeste, behave for Grandma. I love you, and gave her a big hug. We went to the same restaurant Sabrina and I used to visit. Our conversation revolved mostly around work. Carrie, a structural engineer, admitted she had yet to pass the professional engineer exam. I'm envious, she said. I've taken the test twice and still haven't passed. Well, I was determined, I replied. I was a full-time student until I passed. I bet you were working. I was. It's clear now that you really need to focus exclusively to pass it. Did your divorce affect your attempts to pass the test? I asked. Definitely. It was a bitter custody battle, and it's still ongoing. I constantly worry that my ex might take Celeste and disappear. He didn't want a divorce and thought his affair was insignificant, believing we should stay together for Celeste's sake. I wasn't having any of it. The courts generally favor the mother, I remarked. Carrie nodded. They do. Mom says your troubles started a week ago. Without going into details, let's just say I realized I had a problem a week ago. Just being honest, it took me 6 long months to get past the rage, hatred, self-pity, and depression. We might run into each other over the next 6 months, but I won't put myself in a vulnerable position until you've worked through your emotional issues. Fair enough, she said. As your invitation mentioned, this is just two strangers grabbing a meal and then sitting nervously next to each other at the theater. She chuckled. I am nervous. Why is that? You're just being considerate. You knew I'd be nervous and didn't want me to feel alone. We switched topics and enjoyed the meal. After the musical, I offered to take her out for a drink, but she declined. Back at Denise's house, Carrie asked, would you like an Irish coffee? That sounds great, I said. We spent another hour discussing engineering projects in the news. When it was time for her to leave, we stood there for a moment, unsure how to end the evening. I had a good time, I said. Me too, she replied. It felt slightly awkward, but it worked for both of us. As I heard Denise's bedroom door close, I suspected she had been eavesdropping. On Sunday, I bought a thank you card and addressed it to Carrie, leaving it with Denise to give to her when she dropped off Celeste on Monday. My alma mater made it to the Sweet 16, so I adjusted my schedule to leave work early, hoping to be home before Carrie arrived to pick up Celeste. I'll admit it, I had a bit of a crush on both her and Celeste. The next 2 weeks didn't exactly fly by, but work kept me busy, and following my attorney's instructions occupied much of my time. I had dinner with Denise 3 or 4 times a week. She's a fascinating person. I had to vacate the house for 3 days because Denise had rented it out before my extended stay. Colin, I know you've booked for 5 more weeks, but I have a proposal. I can rent the room to you for $1,100 per month. If that works for you, I can cancel your upcoming 5-week stay without affecting your customer rating. Do you need time to think about it? Probably. I wouldn't want to make a hasty decision. After a moment, I added, all right, I've thought about it. I'd love to rent the room from you. Keep your key. I'll see you Monday. If there are things you prefer not to move, you can store them in the garage. I smiled and blew her a kiss. Thank you, Denise. I'll bring the cash over the weekend. I realized my next musical was the following Saturday. I printed the tickets and put them in an envelope addressed to Carrie. After moving back in on Monday, I left the tickets for her to pick up when she dropped off Celeste on Tuesday. Carrie, I still don't have someone to look after me. Take your current squeeze and enjoy yourselves. Colin. After unpacking on Monday, I joined Denise for coffee and peach pie. That pie was delicious. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me, Carrie made it. Well, please thank her for me. She's having dinner here tomorrow night. Why don't you thank her yourself? It seemed like Denise had taken on the role of my social coordinator and set up a casual evening with Carrie. I can do that, I replied. On Tuesday morning, I received a message from Sabrina. Mrs. Simpson suggested I find another law firm to start my practice. She found out about our divorce and may have spoken with someone from the wedding. I had anticipated this, so I'll be starting at Adams and Maven on Monday. I responded simply, good luck. She followed up, are we still going to the musical on Saturday? I gave the tickets away, I replied. Have you read my letter? No. Whether you try to spin it as premeditated or spontaneous, the fact remains the same. Colin, it doesn't mean you don't matter to me. You mean everything to me. I wish I could find a way to show you how truly sorry I am. I wasn't in the mood for dinner with Denise and Carrie, but I put on a brave face. Denise caught me off guard by taking Celeste to a movie, leaving just Carrie and me for dinner. We made small talk before moving to the living room and sitting in the recliners. Colin, you seem a bit distracted tonight. Is everything okay? Carrie asked. I texted Sabrina today, I admitted. As you mentioned, it takes time to manage the anger that flares up unexpectedly. Things started to improve about an hour ago. I'm feeling better now. Colin, would you like to join me for the musical on Saturday? It's my turn to pay for dinner. Carrie, I'd be delighted. Is it all right if I wear flip-flops and ripped jeans? I teased. I'll leave that up to you, she said with a familiar mischievous glint in her eye. On Saturday, I dressed in my best suit. This time, we both felt much more at ease with each other, with no signs of the nervousness from our first outing. After enjoying drinks at Denise's house post-show, we found ourselves uncertain about how to end the evening. Colin, come closer. I don't want my mom to overhear this, Carrie whispered that I leaned in, and she took my hand. I really enjoy your company, she said softly before kissing me on the cheek. She tried to pull her hand away, but I lifted it to my lips and kissed the back of her hand. I really enjoy your company too, I replied that we both burst into laughter. As I released her hand, she stepped closer and gave me a gentle hug. I had a wonderful time, I said. Me too, she replied. The next day, I bought another thank you card and left it for Carrie. When I got home from work on Friday afternoon, Kathleen was visiting Denise. Kathleen gave me a few blessings, but I still wasn't going to attend her Sunday services. I was always relieved when she left. Dinner with Denise that night felt a little unusual. After sharing so many meals together, it was clear something was on her mind. Denise, what's bothering you? I asked. Colin, I don't mean to pry, but curiosity got the better of me. How do you deal with your, desires? Well, Denise, I said, feigning seriousness, if you really want to know, I leave the front door unlocked so Kathleen can sneak in and take full advantage of me. She's a miracle, honestly. I'm surprised we haven't woken you up with our screams. Denise burst into uncontrollable laughter, tears streaming down her face as she coughed. Stop it. You're terrible, she gasped. The idea of her having such urges is ridiculous, I said with a grin. But who wants to know? Does it matter? Probably not, she admitted, still laughing, but I'm curious too. Are you asking about yourself? I teased. Maybe you're wondering if you're starting to think like a cougar. Or maybe Kathleen is too shy to bring this up herself and sent you to ask for her. Denise shook her head, still laughing. No, it's not about Kathleen, she said, finally catching her breath. Let me ask you this, Roger passed away a few years ago. How are you dealing with your desires? That's different, she replied. We were in love and raised 2 wonderful daughters together. The idea of being with someone else doesn't appeal to me. Maybe that will change, but it hasn't yet. It's not so different, I said. I was in love, and just like a sudden car crash, it ended. Unlike you, though, I have mixed feelings. I love her, but I hate her even more. She shattered the trust needed to be together. I will never take her back. Unfortunately, the thought of being with someone else doesn't appeal to me either. Maybe that will change eventually, but it hasn't yet. Denise stood up, walked over to me, and wrapped her arms around me. Resting her head next to mine, she said nothing for a few moments. Then she kissed me gently on the cheek. I guess that means you're looking out for someone close to you, I said. She's worried that you'll find someone to meet your needs before she gathers the courage to start a relationship. She doesn't want to miss her chance, she's still struggling with her divorce. Denise said that I handed my phone to Denise. Dial her number. She did, and after handing the phone back to me, I waited for the call to connect. Hello. Carrie answered. Carrie, this is Colin. If you're free tomorrow, would you and Celeste join me for a picnic? I'd love your company. If you can find a good babysitter on short notice, we could even extend the day into the evening. Denise playfully smacked the back of my head, but Carrie's voice lit up. Colin, I'd like that. What time should we meet? How about noon? I'll drive to your mom's house. That works. See you tomorrow. Good night. Good night. Denise gave me a hug and a kiss on the cheek as her phone rang with Carrie's ringtone. I'll leave you 2 alone, she said with a smirk. Good night, Denise. Good night, Colin. And don't forget to leave the door open for Kathleen. Make sure to leave yours open for her too, I shot back. She threw the book she had been reading across the room at me. Stop it, she said, laughing. The next day, Carrie and Celeste arrived around noon. Since I didn't have the right car seat for Celeste, I loaded the picnic gear into Carrie's car, and she drove. You can drive if you'd like, I offered. I don't mind driving. The medication has me feeling pretty relaxed, she replied. Then she tapped the brakes, and I instinctively reached for the dashboard. Looks like the medication isn't doing its job, I joked, and we both laughed. We had a wonderful time at the playground, where I enjoyed playing with Celeste. If this were a test, I think I aced it. Later that evening, after Celeste told her grandmother how much fun she had, Carrie and I went out on a proper date. We had dinner and then visited a nightclub. Although several men invited her to dance, she declined. We danced a few times, though it's not really my thing. Instead, we entertained ourselves by imagining how all the couples had met on the dance floor. Carrie's vivid imagination turned it into a surprisingly fun activity. When the evening was over, I helped Celeste into her car seat. After securing her, Carrie turned to me. Colin, I had a wonderful time today. Can I hug and kiss you properly this time? I didn't need to be asked twice. Her kiss was heartfelt and lingered, leaving me momentarily flustered. "Calm down," she teased. "You'd better go inside and get ready to meet Kathleen now." Her comment left me confused. Obviously, Denise had been privy to some of our conversations. That's a good idea. I can't tell you how much I needed a day like this. "See you on Monday." "Good night, Colin," she said, her eyes sparkling. I needed it too. As I turned to leave, I noticed Denise watching us from the living room window before quickly disappearing. Kathleen never showed up, and I spent most of the night awake. The following Friday, I joined Kathleen for dinner at Denise's house. At one point, while Kathleen had her back turned to the refrigerator, I playfully grabbed my chest with one hand, licked the back of the other, and mimed exaggerated gestures toward Denise. Denise laughed and loudly said, "Colin, please sit and join us." Kathleen, oblivious, continued her mission to convert me. As I've mentioned before, it's always a relief to watch her leave the house. "Pretty proud of yourself, huh?" Denise remarked after Kathleen left. She gave me a quick kiss on the lips and followed it with a long hug. "She has a great figure, though you'd never guess it with the loose tops she wears," I said with a grin. "Thanks for everything, Colin. Carrie mentioned you're taking her to a movie tomorrow." "Yeah, at the Megaplex. I'll let her choose." "I hope Kathleen realizes you're dating again." "Me too. With her connections, I might end up burning in hell." Sabrina, meanwhile, was persistent in being sweet and caring. She sent daily texts and occasionally called, despite my efforts to make it clear the divorce was inevitable. Over time, I realized her messages no longer made me angry. I think I was moving on. Denise held a small gathering for her 50th birthday on Sunday afternoon. I brought a few gifts, labeling one with Kathleen's name and the others with mine. I made sure to slip Kathleen's gift into the pile after she left. Carrie and I were sitting on the couch as Denise opened her presents, thanking each person as she went. When she got to the gift labeled as being from Kathleen, she let out a gasp, ran from the room with the box, and disappeared into her bedroom. When she returned, she laughed and pointed at me. "Colin, you're awful. I'll get you for this." Carrie noticed the mischievous grin on my face. "Tell me what you did," she demanded. "It's an inside joke," I replied. "She'll explain it better." What I had actually done was slip in a collar from an adult store that read, "My BCH." Denise eventually returned, her face flushed. She worked hard to divert the curiosity of the other guests, but her embarrassment only made it more amusing. Now her friends probably thought she was a cougar, and I was her younger lover. I couldn't help but enjoy the irony. Only Denise, Carrie, and I remained after the crowd thinned. Carrie, still curious, asked, "What was in the package?" "You don't want to know that," I said. "Nope, tell me." "Well, okay," Denise said, laughing, and she explained everything. Both she and Carrie giggled before Denise added, "Carrie, that's what you wanted to know. Two can play this game. What do you do with your desires?" Carrie turned pale. "Oh my God, I didn't mean to, oh my God. Why did you say that?" "Oh no, you can't back out now," Denise teased. "Let's hear it. What do you do with your desires?" "You already know what Colin does with his." Blushing, Carrie mumbled, "I use toys." "Are you happy now?" I moved closer to Carrie and hugged her tightly. She pulled my head down, gave me a sweet kiss, and whispered, "I'll get a room," as Denise chimed in playfully. After tidying up from the party, Carrie and Celeste prepared to leave. I walked them to the car. Once Celeste was buckled into her car seat, Carrie turned to me and drew me in for another kiss. "Would you be interested in another movie night next weekend?" she asked. "I'd really like that," I replied. Our movie nights had become dates. We held hands, cuddled, and acted like a couple. I found myself eagerly anticipating these small outings. The divorce hearing was set for Thursday. On Tuesday, I stayed late at work and got home around 6 p.m. To my surprise, both Carrie and Sabrina's cars were in the driveway. All I needed to complete this awkward scene was Kathleen showing up, too. "Sabrina, what a surprise," I said, stepping inside. Before Sabrina could respond, Carrie spoke up. "Hi, honey. How was work today?" She walked up to me, wrapped her arms around my waist, and tilted her head up for a kiss that I hugged her back, looked into her eyes, and kissed her. "Pretty good. How was your day?" "Still working on the Evergreen project. Mom took Celeste out for ice cream. Sabrina and I have just been chatting." Sabrina looked both confused and upset. "Can we talk privately?" she asked. "There's no need," I replied. "You can say whatever you need to say in front of Carrie. She's been through a divorce, so there's nothing she hasn't heard before." Carrie leaned in and kissed me, this time slipping her tongue into my mouth. I responded, caressing her cheek gently. Sabrina's voice trembled. "Colin, I don't want a divorce. There has to be a way for you to forgive me. What do I need to do?" "Sabrina, I've been clear for the last 3 months, we are not getting back together." "But I want you," she pleaded. Carrie stepped in. "There are hundreds of women in this city who would want someone like Colin. He could be happy with any of them. But he can't be happy with you because he can't trust you. You say you love him, but how can you torture him by making him doubt everything you do when you're apart? For the next 50 years, he'd always be wondering, and that's no way to live. I want nothing to do with my ex for the same reasons." Sabrina's face twisted into a sneer. "So now you need someone else to speak for you?" I sighed. "You never listen to me, but everything she's saying is true. I loved you more than words can express, but that wasn't enough for you. I refuse to live with constant anxiety, not knowing what you're up to." Sabrina headed for the door. On the porch, she turned and said, "I love you, Colin." "I love you too, Sabrina. I hope everything works out for you. One last thing, here, take this." I handed her the unopened letter she had written to me. I never opened it. She hesitated. "Let me explain what it says. I admit I agreed to meet Dennis because I wanted intimacy. We had a strained relationship in high school, and when I entered his room, I felt guilty even before anything happened. Dennis became upset, and after a while, he started showing aggression. What happened next was terrible." "Bravo," I said sarcastically. "This is exactly the kind of story I expected. You did what you planned and turned yourself into the victim. If that's true, I'm sorry for you. But you could have stayed away or refused over the phone, but you didn't. And everything else, like our story, just went on as usual." Sabrina tried again. "Colin, I understand why you might doubt me, but it's the truth. That was the only time I ever disrespected you and our marriage. You're right, Sabrina. I have to question everything about our relationship. It seems like you were so close to sparing us all this pain, but you didn't. It's time for you to go." She stood there, staring, as Carrie quietly stepped away and closed the door. "I think she's being honest," Carrie said softly. "Maybe a better man could forgive her. But you've treated her with respect, she's the one who created these problems." "I know," I said. "How long did you say these conflicting emotions lasted for you?" "I'll let you know when mine finally disappear," I replied. Carrie smirked. "By the way, did I mention that you can touch me? Did I say you could kiss me like that?" she teased. I stepped closer. "Don't start something you can't finish." Carrie raised her hands to stop me, but I gently grabbed her wrists and lifted her arms above her head. Pressing her back against the door, I kissed her deeply. That evening, after Celeste was asleep, I visited Carrie. We spent a few intimate hours together. Before leaving, I explained to Denise, I have a project meeting tonight, so I won't be back until midnight. You might want to lock the door so Kathleen can't get in. If she can't find me, she might come looking for you. Giggling, Denise said, You're bad. How do you feel about Sabrina right now? It's over with her. Tonight was exactly what I needed to move on. I'm glad to hear that. Colin, you know Carrie wasn't pretending earlier, she was just hoping. Denise smiled. I made dinner early today. It'll take about 10 minutes to warm everything up. I arrived at Carrie's house shortly before 9 p.m. She was still wearing the same blouse and trousers from earlier. As soon as the door closed, we resumed what we had started earlier in the evening. Since we both had to work the next morning, I eventually got dressed to leave. Colin, I don't know what this will mean for us, Carrie said softly, but I really needed it. Carrie, I needed that too. You were exactly what I needed, I replied. I'll call you tomorrow to tell you that I still care about you. You'd better, she said with a playful smile. And I did, both at lunch and after dinner. On Thursday, after learning that the divorce was finalized, I texted Carrie, Do you want to come over tonight and celebrate? See you at 9. Later that day, I received a message from Sabrina, Can I take you out to dinner and go to the movies? I replied, Sabrina, you need to find someone else you can love. I hope you see a psychologist to work through your self-destructive behavior. I will always care for you, but I can't live with you. Thanks for the offer, but no. Please move on. That evening, when Carrie opened the door, she was wearing a nightgown, a clear sign of where the night was heading. That night, we made love. There were no promises or expectations, just two people enjoying each other's company and intimacy. Afterward, Carrie opened up about her marriage. Her ex-husband, David, had been an intern and seemed infatuated with a woman from a diner. What Carrie didn't know at first was that David had been hiding their marriage from this other woman. The truth came out when she burst into his office during a lunch meeting with Carrie, leading to chaos as she revealed their affair. Colin, I have to warn you, Carrie said. David might be mentally unstable. If he finds out we're dating, he could potentially come after you. Carrie, you're worth it, I replied. I'm willing to take the risk. I couldn't help but note to myself that Carrie could be absolutely amazing in bed when she felt cared for. Carrie and I continued dating for 6 weeks before we discussed exclusivity. The conversation was short and sweet. She had been my only partner since Sabrina, and I had been hers since her divorce. Carrie understood my stance on fidelity, and I shared my past with her openly. At that time, I was still living in Denise's guest room. We weren't ready to live together yet, and Kathleen still seemed to believe I cared about her religious discussions. At work, I signed a contract requiring several on-site inspections, our first real test as a couple. While I had no reason to doubt Carrie's loyalty, my insecurities got the better of me one night when her phone went to voicemail. An hour later, I tried again, but it went to voicemail again. Finally, Carrie called back around 10 p.m. Hello, dear. I saw you called several times. I did, I admitted. I guess I forgot where you were. Do you remember I mentioned taking the engineering exam today? Yes, I remember. What time did it start? At 6. I'm sorry I worried you. It sounds like you were alarmed when I didn't answer. How did the test go? Much better, thanks to my tutor. When does your plane arrive? Carrie met me at the airport, and we went out to dinner. During our meal, it became clear we were both navigating insecurities. Colin, maybe we're moving too fast, Carrie admitted. I trust you, but I was so worried when you didn't answer that night. You're not alone, I replied. I felt the same way when your phone went to voicemail. We're two people with vulnerable hearts, but one missed call isn't enough to change my feelings for you. Tears welled up in her eyes. I love you, Colin, she said softly. I love you too, Carrie, I replied. Later, she asked, "Celeste is staying the night with my mom. Would you like to stay over?" The next day, I was useless at work. We hadn't argued, but the passion between us the night before had been so intense it felt like reconciliation after a fight. After just a few hours of sleep, I woke up in Carrie's arms and enjoyed another unforgettable morning with her before heading to work. We continued taking things slow, and before we knew it, 6 months had passed. Carrie made a big deal of the milestone, and I felt in my heart that I was finally over Sabrina. But life has a way of reminding you not to take anything for granted. A few months later, I received an invitation to Sabrina's wedding. It was a Thursday night, and Carrie usually stayed for dinner at Denise's house. "Colin, you're not yourself tonight," Carrie said. "I can't quite put my finger on it, but something's off." "You know me too well," I replied, handing her the invitation. She read it and passed it to Denise. "Ouch," Denise said. "Looks like you're facing the reality of being replaced. I bet this is how Sabrina felt when she saw you with Carrie that night." "I guess so," I admitted. "It just brought up some feelings I thought I'd moved past." "Flip it over and read the back," Denise said, handing the invitation back to Carrie. Carrie read it aloud. "Colin, I plan to be the most faithful, loving wife the world has ever known." "Well," Carrie quipped, "she'll be second to me. Whoever ends up with me will have the most faithful, loving wife in the world." "Oh, and by the way, we're not going to her wedding," I added. Denise grinned. "Got any prospects lined up?" "No, but I'm starting to get a bit impatient," Carrie replied with a laugh. "I've got my eye on someone. He's in his early 30s but still lives with his mom." "Ah, some unresolved mommy issues, huh? Maybe with a bit of your help, he could live a normal life," Denise teased. As they giggled, I excused myself and found Celeste watching TV. "Celeste, I was thinking of asking your mom to spend more time with me. What do you think?" Celeste looked up with a smile. "Mommy smiles when she sees you." I glanced at Carrie, who shrugged. "Nana smiles when she sees you too. She waits by the window and says, 'Colin's home.'" I looked at Denise, who also shrugged with a grin. Carrie stared at Denise, her smile fading slightly. "Will we stay here more, Colin?" "Actually," I said, "I was thinking I'd be spending more time where you live." "Won't that make Nana sad?" Celeste asked. Denise joined in reassuringly. "Honey, I'll still see you as much as always. I know Colin and your mommy will make sure I'm not sad." Celeste looked at me. "Colin, will you read me bedtime stories?" "Anytime you want, sweetie." Celeste turned to Carrie. "Mommy, you're smiling again. I think you like Colin." Carrie chuckled. "I do, sweetie." At that moment, I fished a small box out of my pocket. "I wasn't sure if you'd even be interested in getting married again," I said, dropping to one knee and opening the ring box. "Carrie, will you marry me?" Carrie's eyes filled with tears as she pushed me over and landed on top of me. "Yes," she exclaimed. After a brief display of affection, Denise remarked with a smirk, "Get a room." Celeste giggled and jumped on top of us, completing the pile. After enjoying some peach pie that Carrie had made, we called it an evening. Denise watched Celeste that night, and Carrie and I spent several intimate hours together. On Friday afternoon, Carrie and I packed my belongings and loaded up both cars. "I'm going to miss you, Denise," I said. "Thanks for letting me out of my lease." "And I'm really going to miss your peach pie." Carrie playfully slapped the back of my head. "Keep being silly, and you might not get any more pie." After hugs and kisses, we drove to Carrie's house, where I settled into my new surroundings. That night, I read 2 bedtime stories to Celeste that we both decided to opt out of attending any parties solo, not wanting to cause the other unnecessary concern. That's how it is when you're trying to rebuild love and trust. Even though I wanted to send Sabrina an announcement, I respected Carrie's wishes and managed to rise above any lingering grievances. However, I declined all suggestions about having our honeymoon in Mexico. Celeste was absolutely charming as the flower girl at our wedding, and Carrie looked stunning and radiant in her dress. Her ex-husband, David, turned out to be quite pleasant when he was with Celeste on his weekends. I suppose our marriage saved him some money in the long run. Denise resumed renting out her room after I moved out, though I still jokingly call her a cougar in training. She continues to flirt far more than you'd expect from a mother-in-law. Kathleen still joins us for Friday night dinners at Denise's house. It's always a pleasure to see her leave the house with a smile. Celeste and I have become the best of friends. I read her bedtime stories, and she shows me how her dollhouses work. Carrie and I waited 2 years before growing our family. Celeste now has a baby brother, and our home is filled with love and laughter.